persona of Whitey Bulger is mythical in South Boston. A lot of that has to do with fear. There's no question for the better part of 3 decades, he terrorized this area.
James Whitey Bulger became one of Boston's most notorious gangsters.
The criminal element in that town, he basically controlled, you know, for a generation. Nothing happened in that town that he didn't have a piece of.
A lot of people's lives were ruined because of Whitey Bulger. Not only murdered, but I mean families got these sons and daughters addicted to drugs. A lot of that happened on Whitey's watch.
The story has had so many twists and turns. The sad thing is that so much time has passed that a lot of people who were corrupt, a lot of people did get away.
It'll be very difficult for many people from this area to see The Departed and not immediately notice the parallels of both stories.
In no way do we say that Francis Costello, played by Jack Nicholson in the film, is directly patterned after Whitey Bulger. But we put it this way, we felt comfortable in the character, and we felt comfortable in the situation because we knew it to be true. We take that as a touchstone, so to speak. First of all, let's start with the script. The script in this picture was by William Monahan, and that's what got me involved in it. Based on these extraordinary Chinese films and the Hong Kong cinema.
I wasn't, no more than Marty, was I just going to do a remake. So it was important to personalize it.
This lead came from Queen Anne's undercover guy. I'm gonna have a smoke right now. You want to smoke? You don't smoke, do you? Right? What do you want, all those fitness freaks?
And, you know, I've got a bit to say about the milieu that it's set in, which is angry young men from Boston.
He was able to, I believe, draw upon things that he'd seen in the neighborhood. And hearing stories about the different gangs that were around Boston at that time, and took a lot upon real historical facts of the Boston crime scene. So he was able to capture this unique area in the United States and make a really fantastic script.
It's interesting because he created a world with the police and with the, I guess, wise guys in that area that was so unique to me that I felt he really captured an attitude. And so for me, it's more about the people and more about the philosophy of life that they had.
Southie is kind of a unique place. Everyone who's from here is proud of who they are, proud of where they came from.
1, 2, big jumping up.
A place where growing up, family was very important.
The Shaughnessy's, they had 11 kids here. Next door, the Powers is the first Powers family had 6.
I bought my mother's house. You're in your mother's house.
They want us there or
Yeah,
not.
but they want us there or not, but we're all back.
The Irish people in Boston, they're very Irish, they're very faith-based, they're very loyal, and there is community solidarity in Southie.
It's just, you can't explain. If you're not from here, you don't understand what I'm saying.
You know, with acting, you can either make it up or you can go figure out how people really do it. I'm from Boston, so there are a lot of cultural things and things that are second nature to me.
I mean, Boston there's only one. My growing up there has an effect on everything that I do. I didn't have to do much homework. I mean, instead, the only difference was I was playing one of the cops that used to arrest me all the time.
South Boston's like a big unruly family, is what it is. It's, you have a lot of fighting going on and stuff, and a lot of squabbles and stuff.
Sometimes you'd fight 3 times on the way home just to get home. You know, you'd have 3 different corners you had to go through. So by the time I'm in the 4th grade, I was a pretty tough little kid. I could handle myself pretty well. And once people understood that you could handle yourself, then they didn't bother you again.
But at least you woke up the next morning. It was fist fights. You know, people weren't shooting or stabbing each other back then. That was frowned upon.
It wasn't that you had to win every fight, every street fight that you were involved in, but you had to at least participate. If you didn't, you maintained no status in your neighborhood.
I remember when I read the original script and was talking about the busing strikes at Southie High and all that stuff. My dad was a Teamster and drove a bus then. And it has a reputation of being a kind of tough place.
And there's an allusion to this in the film. The busing of the 70s changed and began to break up the tightness of the groups in Southie.
Boston public schools were pretty much segregated, and the courts decided to desegregate the schools by ordering busing.
I think they were stereotyped back in the 60s and 70s as being a racist community, and that was magnified at the start of busing. They just were not going to stand by and have a federal judge or a federal edict take away their liberties of choosing where their children should go to school. The people of Southie, by nature, they don't really welcome outsiders. They can have their own internal beefs amongst themselves, but don't let anyone from outside come in and question their sovereign authority.
There's sort of an island mentality there. There's a feeling that South Boston was different than any other neighborhood in the city. And that sort of the pride and the insularity there also fed an awful lot of denial.
People believed Whitey was protecting the community. And people really felt like he may be a gangster, but he's our gangster. South Boston isn't the kind of place where people are going to run to the FBI or the Boston police and report, what's happening. They tend to handle things within the community.
I definitely needed to go to Boston and walk around the neighborhoods and get the feeling of the people. And there was somebody that I hung around a lot with on the film who really helped me perfect the accent and took me around the old neighborhoods and told me old stories of, Whitey Bulger and the whole sort of scene that went on there.
I was hired to work as the technical consultant for The Departed. The vast majority of my career was spent as a detective and specifically the investigation of the Irish mob headed by James Whitey Bulger.
There's only one guy from Boston, an Irish gangster who ran the whole thing. That's Whitey Bulger.
Whitey was famous. Everybody just knew about it in Boston.
I mean, you're always going to hear stories about Southie and stories about Whitey.
Want to tell them about the story about the cat?
Oh, yeah. We were 9 or 10 years old, and my buddy says, "Hey, Bo, can you help me out? Can you do me a favor?" And I was like, "Well, okay." So we got to bury a cat. I said, "You're kidding me. Where'd it come from?" It's Whitey's. I said, "Oh, my God." So we ended up doing it quick, and then
How to do it.
the next thing you know, he comes up to me later, Kevin, and "Here, here's a double sawbuck. This is from the big guy, Whitey." And I'm like, "I'm 9 years old, we're from the projects, 20
Imagine
bucks.
that, the
I'll
people
put it right in my
that
pocket."
live in those condos now that are there don't even know the cat's there.
Well, my father did a lot of the investigation regarding Bulger and Connolly and all that kind of stuff. At one point, he had to bug their car, and they came out and got in it while he was under the car bugging it. And they ended up driving away, and they didn't notice that he was there, so he got away that time.
But The Departed is by no means a Whitey Bulger story. The existence of the Whitey Bulger story and the FBI corruption and so forth made the Chinese story sort of slide into Boston very easily and believably.
You didn't come here to talk, all right? You came here to get arrested. You got tapes of what? Costello was my informant.
We try to utilize the information we read about as a kind of comfort zone to know that a lot of the stuff was factual. Because if somebody had written that, I said, "No, come on, that's just too much." It's too much.
Yeah, this story is wilder than fiction. It is the Angels with Dirty Faces stories. I mean, there is, many families in South Boston, you would have a priest in the family, but oftentimes there was this, the gangster in the family, the sort of black sheep of the family.
Like the Bulgers, both extremely capable, intelligent men. I think they both understood the use of power. Billy chose to use it politically to his advantage and to his own agenda, where Jimmy opted for the opposite, that he could obtain power through his use of force and a gun.
Whitey Bulger's brother, Billy Bulger, was the Senate president and probably the most powerful politician in Massachusetts. You had two brothers who grew up in the same household in South Boston. Both had risen to the top of their chosen professions. One was a politician and one was a gangster.
Triple O's, I started working down there on St. Patrick's Day. I mean, Whitey Bulger used to come in the bar on the weekends, and he paid more and more interest in me and the way I conducted myself at fights I was involved in, and just basically how I handled myself throughout the night. And we became closer and closer. And eventually I went to work for him. I was 18 years old when I came around him. And, after I really got associated with him, I started making good money, big money. And, You know, everything comes with it. You know, like in the movies, the respect, the power, whatever, but the money, and the adrenaline. You know, the rush of doing things. You know, it was strong.
I knew Mr. Bulger. I know all of the Bulgers. I had no idea that he was involved in murder. I thought he was involved in the numbers.
He was very careful in trying to sort of present himself as this good bad guy, somebody who, you know, was keeping the drugs out of Southie. But in fact, that really was a myth.
He spread that. That was his own propaganda machine. No, he would spread those feel-good stories about himself to make himself look like something that he wasn't. He did nothing unless it made him look good or it benefited him financially. If he was helping some elderly woman with groceries, you can bet she had a nice-looking granddaughter someplace. He did nothing out of kindness.
Over the course of the 70s and 80s, Jimmy Bulger and Stephen Flemmi essentially assumed control of the Boston underworld. They did it in a twofold manner. They were extremely treacherous, violent individuals. Whitey in particular enjoyed nothing better than a good killing. But Flemmi was somebody that was ruthless. It was not uncommon that Bulger and Flemmi would have disputes amongst themselves as to, you know, who would get to kill so-and-so.
Whitey and Stevie, they really were and are a cancer. We had our own rules. We had our own boundaries. There were certain things we wouldn't do. There was nothing they wouldn't do.
They had also managed to infiltrate the organized crime unit of the FBI and use them to their advantage. And this allowed them to flourish for many, many years.
As I progressed, the crimes became more and more violent, where, you know, you're beating people more vicious and stuff, and it's just baby steps until finally you're involved in, you know, the ultimate crime of murder.
In the early 80s, this building here became like a symbol of the Irish mafia. Around 1984 is when Whitey Bulger and his associates kind of muscled their way in and took over the store. And Whitey kind of made it like his mafia headquarters in a way, or at least that's what it became known for. It was called the South Boston Liquor Mart. And everybody kind of knew, you know, if, you know, Whitey was in there. You know, I think he had meetings in the back room.
Whitey Bulger was more or less the most important, most powerful gangster in Boston at the time. That led basically to me asking, you know, well, how come there haven't been cases made against Whitey? And said to a few people here that, you know, I think Whitey's a rat. It's the only explanation why he hadn't been taken down. And it wasn't what I thought, it was just what was being told to me by people, particularly in law enforcement, that Whitey Bulger had this relationship with the FBI that protected him. In 1988, we have our Spotlight team here is basically an investigative unit. And we put in play the whole idea that maybe we can go out there and find out what this relationship with Bulger is, kind of put it on record.
And in part, the reason that he was able to become so successful and really control most of the illegal rackets in Boston was because of his relationship with an agent at the FBI, an agent named John Connolly, who grew up in the same neighborhood. It really comes back to South Boston and the roots that they developed as children, you know, growing up in the same housing project. John says it was because he was the hometown agent that he was able to recruit the hometown gangster, and that there was a trust there, that Whitey Bulger knew that if he were to serve as an informant for John Connolly, another Southie guy, that he would never hurt him.
And who's really culpable here in this relationship? You know, FBI, the gangsters, it all goes together. It's mind-boggling, and it's almost totally unbelievable.
December 23rd, 1994, an FBI agent came down the store and told me that there was indictments coming down, they were imminent, and I got a hold of Whitey, and he took off that day.
The fact that he is still out there today as the #2 most wanted on the FBI's list, second only to Osama bin Laden, speaks for itself.
Well, I think the turning point within Bulger's gang was in 1998 when the informant files of Whitey Bulger and Stevie Flemmi were made public. Other members of the gang were just felt so betrayed. They didn't know that Whitey was an informant.
Treachery, double dealing, backstabbing, paranoia. He had that mindset. Now we know why he was like that. He had to keep everyone at each other's throats because he was a rat.
We all believed we were paying for the information, and that goes for everyone that was with us, that we were, paying law enforcement for information.
In Irish culture, an informer is the worst thing you could be. And, that still carries over to a certain extent.
I think the most damaging aspect of that revelation was that people now had to ponder that everything this guy stood for was a lie. I mean, he became the mother of all rats.
Stevie Flemmi, who had been captured and was awaiting trial, launched this sort of novel defense, which was, we were FBI informants, we had immunity, we were promised that as long as we provided information that we would not be prosecuted. But at that point, they weren't charged with murder and he wasn't admitting murders.
While I was on the street, I was walking a thin line, because if Stevie Flemmi cooperated, I'd be indicted for murders. And when I got arrested in '99, my option was spend life in prison, or I could be out on the street. And the two guys that were giving up everybody would be in prison. Part of my agreement with the government is basically as a sign of good faith, I led them to 3 bodies, that people that we had killed and buried. That was the start of it, and then subsequently I led them to 3 more grave sites. The judge took into consideration my cooperation, and I was sentenced to 6 years.
And there was nothing that was more sort of stunning than the discovery that he actually had killed women.
In the case of the 2 girls, Deborah Hussey was the daughter of Stevie Flemmi's common-law wife. Apparently, he began a sexual relationship with her when she was young, say teenage. When she was 26 years old, she indicated that she was going to go public with that, and Stevie wasn't going to allow that to happen. Deborah Davis was a little different. Unfortunately for her, she got involved in Stevie when she was 17 years old. An extremely beautiful young girl was involved with him up until the same age as Deborah Hussey, 26 years old, when she reportedly met someone else. Well, his ego wouldn't allow that.
Hope ran out today for the family of Deborah Davis, the former girlfriend of reputed mob boss Stephen the Rifleman Flemmi.
There's no ending your relationship on your terms with them. They'll end the relationship, and usually it's done through murder.
And so until they started digging up their bodies, I think there was a lot of denial. But once that happened, I think there was this sort of recognition. It was pretty hard to deny that they were bad guys. But there was still people in South Boston who would defend Whitey Bulger.
I'd say 6 or 7 months ago, this older woman walked up. She said, Brian, she said, I wish Whitey was still here. And I looked at her and I said, why would you want why would you want Whitey to be here? She said, because when Whitey was here, there were no drugs in the town. And that's still the perception some people have, not majority people anymore. A lot of people in this town now understand fully what Whitey Bulger was about, and we're ashamed of it.
The backbone of Southie's always been the working families, the mothers and fathers who stayed together, raised their families, the guys who stayed home. We were the flash. We were the guys that got all the bad press and gave Southie sort of a reputation it didn't entirely deserve.
The town is made up of saints and sinners like every other town across America.
People would attack me in the 80s writing these stories about criminals in South Boston. It was, unavoidable fact. It existed there. But the reality is South Boston is a beautiful place. Some of the best people I've ever met in this town are from South Boston. So I think it is unfair but that's just the way it goes. Gangsters are sexy. It's the reason why, everybody wants to see Scorcese's next movie. It's because people are interested in it. But it's obviously just one slice of South Boston.
We tried never to really make, I'm sure there'll be a lot of films based on Bulger and coming up, because it's a fascinating story. And particularly the FBI element is fascinating. When you talk about good people trying to do a good thing and winding up doing terrible things, it's like, where's the gray line here? Where's the grayness? How gray could it get in terms of morality, black and white? There isn't any, it's all gray.
South Boston my whole life. It's just great, great place to be. One of my good friends has a cigarette in his nose behind me.
Getting back to Southie, we love it. This is where we born, you know?